Namaste. Welcome to the Conscious Convo podcast. I am your host and teacher, Pippa Leslie. I'm here to share everything I learn, see, and channel. This podcast is for the conscious and curious beings who are ready to dive deeper into spirituality. I am so grateful you are here. Hi guys, welcome back. Now, I was just thinking about this before I press record. I'm always saying that I'm excited to talk to all these people that come on the podcast, and I truly am. But with Kara-Leah, I came across Kara-Leah for a recommendation since being in New Zealand, and I started to follow you, and I was starting to look at your page, and I just was really drawn to your energy and just drawn to your message and what you do for the world. And with being new in New Zealand, I was looking for that tribe, looking for the spiritual people here. So to be able to have you on the podcast today is an absolute honor. So hi, Kara-Leah. Kara-Leah she has a podcast herself, which is Conversations with Kara-Leah. You can go and check that out. She is an author, a teacher, and a mentor. So I'm excited to get her wealth of knowledge on here today. So hi.
Hi, thanks so much for inviting me to come and talk about all the things.
I know. I'm just excited to see where this conversation goes because, as I mentioned earlier, you've a wealth of knowledge. So that's why, I love how these conversations just flow down different paths. But one thing I definitely want to ask you is, how did you get into all this? Where did the journey begin?
The journey really began when I was born, I'd say. And if past lives are a thing, who knows? They may or may not be before then. I think some of the key markers along the way, when I was living in Auckland in my I think I was 20, and a guy that I was flirting with and then later began to see, he took me to a yoga class. It was 1995, and his male friend, which is kind of curious, was teaching a yoga class, an Iyengar class on Barriers Point Road. And I was incredibly inflexible. I'd had a back operation 4 years prior. I couldn't barely touch my toes. And I just remember Iyengar yoga, of course, uses props. And it would literally there was two teachers in the room, and I felt like it would take them 2 or 3 minutes to prop me into the posture, and then it'll be time to get out of the posture. So I remember that, but I also remember just having this real knowingness that yoga was going to be so important to myself and my life. And that's so that was a key moment. And then the other key moment, probably the same year, was I read the Celestine Prophecy.
Oh, brilliant.
And I think,
brilliant
I think it had just come out because it was 1995. And that just blew, I was like, oh my God, you can see auras on trees. And I'm staring at the trees. I'm trying to see the auras, and I'm doing all the things. But it opened up curiosity and potential pathways. So those two things, I think, really got me going on it all.
Yeah. I was the same. I read the Celestine Prophecy, and then I watched the movie, and obviously the movie wasn't as good as the book, but it really got me thinking about auras and energy, and how you are transferring energy all the time, and you can pick up on people's energy. I say to everyone, if someone walks into a room, you can literally tell what mood they're in, because that is picking up on energy, and we all have that energy. And one thing I definitely want to talk about on the episode is a Kundalini awakening. Now, I've heard it before, and I never really dived into it. I just knew it was to do with yoga. And I wouldn't say I've had a Kundalini awakening from the little I do know, but if I had to describe it in how I would describe it, is it's very similar to a quantum shift for me, because I've had a quantum shift, and it's again how Wayne Dyer would describe it, is it's just one day you just have a moment where it's everything just changes, and everything's just, your life's never the same. The sky looks bluer, the grass is greener. You just start to see the world differently. But with a Kundalini awakening, is that something that you would have with a regular yoga practice, or is it something that's completely different?
Great questions. I think the first thing to understand is that the word Kundalini it comes from the Tantric traditions. It's first mentioned in the Tantric texts around 700 CE. And it's one of those words, particularly Kundalini awakening, that has become a signifier for so much, in that when people are using the word, they're pointing at such a wide range of things that have happened. So there is, what Kundalini is from a technical tantric perspective and what it means, but then there's the common usage in the day-to-day spiritual world as such. And so one way to look at Kundalini awakening is that it's when something inside of us wakes up and we just begin to sense that there is so much more to the world, to the material, than we thought there was. And the way that looks and feels will be different for everybody. It can be accompanied with all kinds of weird bodily sensations and spontaneous movements and spontaneous noises. It can be really scary. Like the range of what can happen for people is enormous. So it is something, it's a term that originated within the tantric traditions, within the yogic world. But like, I had Kundalini awakening happen for me when I was in Hawaii in 2000, and I was receiving past life regression sessions with a healer. And that was when my body began to spontaneously move. And after that session, I walked out of the session and it was like, felt like I was on really good, clean MDMA. It was just like my heart was like completely open, and I was one with everything and the colors and and then after that, I began to feel this energy in my lower spine would sort of rise up, and then it would hit like what felt like a little air pocket and would kind of pop and would drop back down. And so I was aware of that movement, but that was about all that happened in the first sort of 4 years. I was regularly doing yoga. I was also still doing quite a lot of recreational drug use, including consciousness expanding drugs like LSD and mushrooms and cannabis, along with ecstasy and cocaine and alcohol. And then I got into quite a challenging emotional relationship. I fell madly in love with this beautiful, beautiful man, and all of my shit started to come up, all my patterns, all my insecurities. It was just a shit show, basically. And that we went to a festival together, and all the stuff happened simultaneously. And I went into this huge expansion in my perceptual awareness. So time kind of collapsed in. To give you a concrete example, there was one moment where I was walking through the forest with my fiance and my best friend. And all of a sudden I had this knowingness that they would end up in a relationship together. And I just knew it. And I'm like, this is my fiance, this is my best friend. And I couldn't couldn't process that. And it was just so intense because I was perceiving beyond what I would ordinarily be perceiving. And I reckon if the dog barks, we just let the dog bark.
I know
it has her dogs here.
It's still windy. It's like the wind's not stopped.
Yeah,
and I think you can hear rattles. I'm like, okay, but they're in all my videos anyway because I'm on YouTube. I'm like, oh, here's my dog.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So anyway, that particular awakening, it went so big. My perception, I wasn't grounded. I couldn't contain it. I had so much psychological shit going on. I ended up in the psych ward, which is quite, fairly common for people that have Kundalini awakenings, particularly so historically, before that would sort of happen in the system, you would do a lot of yogic practice to cleanse the system, right? So you deal with all of your shit, you dissolve all the karmic tensions. I hadn't done enough of that. And I had so much unprocessed, unresolved childhood trauma, etc. And my psyche was quite split internally. I didn't know that. So it really impacted me on a mental, emotional, psyche level. And it took me a long time to heal and recover. So that was kind of like my experience of Kundalini awakening. And now I work with a lot of people that are going through it, and they're like, what's happening to me? I don't understand what's going on. And there can be such a wide range of symptoms as well. And so much I could say on that, but I'll hand back to you to.
Well, I was just going to say, it's amazing how you explain it, because I think when people come to see me for like hypnosis, past life regression, whatever it is they come for, they think like a spiritual awakening is like, oh my God, this is all like great and happy, but actually it comes with all the shit and the stuff comes up. And it's the main thing I teach is self-awareness, because to be self-aware, it's your biggest tool, because you can go, oh, this shit's coming up because of XYZ, and I can then link it to this and link it to when my dad did this, or my mum did that, or my sibling did this. And one of my greatest teachers teaches trauma and breath work, and he's back in the UK, and he said, you don't ever fully release trauma, you don't release it just shifts and moves in your body, because we're in this survival state mostly all the time because of how we're meant to live. We're meant to survive. Our organisms are telling us to survive. So when we feel threatened, when we feel like we're gonna, for example, getting in an argument with a loved one, you know, that can feel like you're going to your body response, you're going to die, you're in a life-threatening situation. So with Kundalini awakenings, with spiritual awakenings, with whatever it is you're going through, like, this is for anyone listening, it's going to be amazing. You're going to be like, this is just incredible. How can I get more awake than this? I always think that, how can I become more awake and how can I know more? And you do, but also to remember, with everything, the duality of the light and the dark, it's all one, you know, it's all going to be together. You're going to be going through massive shifts, massive awakenings, massive healing. And you'll agree with this, Kara-Leah, is that you have to have a very safe, loving space around you. Because when I went through my awakening, partly when I was starting to awake, about 7-8 years ago, I was in a bit of a toxic relationship and my partner at the time didn't support it. So I suppressed it and I didn't feel like I could be myself. And that was with friends too. I lost a lot of friends that thought I was wacky, thought I was woo-woo, thought I was a bit crazy. But ultimately, I feel free. I feel free to just learn, share, you know, experience, you know, especially when you mentioned, as soon as you said Kundalini and the Tantric goes back to like 700 CE, like anything to do with ancient stuff, I'm like, oh, yes, tell me more, because, you know, all that, they knew so much and they've passed it on to us. And we are starting to remember that now. You know, I'm very much into the Tao Te Ching and the messages in the Tao, you know, it's just incredible. Some of the messages that you now look into. So leading on from Kundalini awakenings, I'm so happy you shared that, because that's, you know, a lot of vulnerability that you had in your journey, and that's what this is about, isn't it? These conversations, I've noticed a lot of women and men are having more open, authentic conversations, because we need to have them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the human experience is universal. How we feel on the inside when we lose a loved one, when someone breaks up with us, when our child gets in, it's a universal experience. We all feel the shit. And I mean, I would not disagree with what your teacher said in the UK about the trauma is always there, but I would frame it from the perspective that what I've noticed in my journey is that the more that I'm able to be fully present with whatever trauma response might be arising, if I'm aware of it, we talk about in the Tantra traditions of devouring, digesting, and dissolving. So that awareness of it, it's like embracing it, it's devouring it, which allows us to really feel it, to know what it is, to digest it. And over time, it begins to dissolve. And what that means on a practical level is that incidences that might have triggered a particular trauma response, over time, the same circumstances will no longer trigger that trauma response, because it has been completely dissolved from the inside. But it does take time and the willingness and the right tools, the right practices. Yeah. It's like, that's exactly it.
People think, you know, going to a meditation class or a breathwork session, you're going to release something like that. You know, there's times when you feel like you do, like when I do breathwork session, especially something really deep, I feel like I've just had a chemical like boom in my body. But I just, from that perspective, listening to him, you know, he did say about releasing trauma. He said, it's not like you go into a session and you come out healed. I love what you said about dissolving it, because it is about you just watching it dissolve and dissolve. You know, some things that used to really, really trigger me, now I go, oh, okay. Like last week, I gave an example. Obviously, I'm new in New Zealand, so there is that little bit of a, oh, I'm the newbie, and like, you know, that comes up as new school. You know, when you're a kid, you start a new school, you need to make new friends, you need to fit in, and all this kind of stuff. And I've just allowed myself to fully just flow with life here, because I felt really settled now. I've been here about 9 months, and obviously the story, my listeners all know about my story with my husband now. But I think being here, there's still that little bit of I'm still the newbie, and I'm from UK, I'm not a Kiwi. I still feel that little bit of like an outsider. I was taking my dogs for a walk last week, and isn't it weird? You know something's going to happen, but you don't. And then when it does, you think, I just thought about this before it even happened. I pulled up at a car park to take my dogs for a walk, and the car park's very small. It can fit about 8 cars on there. And I have a big Pajero, a big 4x4. So I got there and someone had parked really rubbishly. And I was like, okay, whatever, you know, no judgment, whatever, do what they do. And I just parked as best I could next to them. After my walk, there was a lovely note left on my car, and it was, you know, if you really cared about people, blah, 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 blah. And I could feel it. I sat with it though. I sat with this piece of paper in my car. I thought, I'm not going to drive yet. I'm just going to sit here and look at the words and just for a minute.
Ooh.
And I
Yeah,
did.
that's
And
the devouring.
feel,
That's the devouring. Yeah.
yeah. And I could feel like, I could feel this voice going, how dare she? And I was going, nope, 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 no, nope. And I just thought, you know what, let me just get this statement out. Let me listen to this person in me that wants to say something. So I listened, and I allowed the, how dare she do this? Da, da, da. Did she even know I was parked that way? Blah, 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 blah. And then I said to myself, does that make you feel better? And I was like, nah. And I got home and I just ripped it up. And I was like, that took so much, because I really wanted to tell my mum and dad are here from the UK. I wanted to come home and just tell them and be like, do you know what someone just did? And I just thought, no, it doesn't matter. And you know what I did when I ripped the piece of paper up? I just sat for a couple of minutes and I just sent that person love. And I just thought she or he might have been having a really crappy day. Me parking there probably made it hard for her to park, or whatever the situation is. We never know. We never know. And that's the key. We never know. So it made me feel just calmer, and I was really, really proud of myself.
Yeah, I love that. Like, to me, that's applied spirituality. You know, you took the time to notice and be with all the things that came up and gave space for it. And that's the devouring and the digestion. And then you felt the compassion naturally arise. That's so epic and beautiful.
I love the word devour, because it reminds me of like chopping away at something. Like, I feel like when you say devour, it's like I'm chopping to get to the, the core of it. So when you mentioned it before about devour and dissolve, I was like, dissolve, just the image you have, like the image is just amazing, because you can literally do that. Like, especially when I was trained in NLP, it was about putting the situation and making it really small, because it can, everything's here, isn't it? When you're going through a trigger and something's really, really, hurtful or sad or whatever it is, it's here in your face and you can't get it out your face. But if you can just sit with it and move it away to the horizon, it just, the difference in your body, it's completely. So, those little things, dissolving it, for me, is dissolving it just to a little tiny little thing on the horizon.
Yeah.
And I'm going to remember that now. So thank you for that. I'm going to remember about
it's as subtle as a teaching, like to devour and digest and dissolve has quite a different felt sense to let go or release. Because we're often told, let go of that anxiety or let go of this. And to me, that feels like a subtle rejection of the thing. It's like, we don't want that. Whereas when we devour the anxiety, let yourself really deeply, deeply feel it fully and embrace it and love it and digest it, there's a whole sense of welcoming whatever is happening, welcoming whatever is present. And in that, there's like a fundamental kind of implication that I am capable of fully feeling this. I'm capable of holding this. I'm capable of meeting this. So that's the orientation from a tantric perspective, because ultimately from a tantric perspective there isn't anything outside of us. So if we're releasing something, it's like, well, where does it go? Who are you? Like, if that anxiety is now floating around in the ether, what, for the next person to walk into, and now they feel anxious, you see? So it's like, no, take responsibility and just devour, digest, and dissolve.
Yeah, I agree with you where you said let go. Like, there's the big emphasis at the moment is about let go and just release it and you'll be fine. And it is about you're moving through trauma, not around it. You're not cutting in shortcuts, and a lot of people don't want to do the deep work, and it's hard. It's hard. Like, I was away from my husband for 18 months physically. That in itself was the biggest challenge, especially when it came to trust, to my insecurities, to everything, to doubt, to everything came up. It was a very, very dark time, since spiritually, because we'd have great days together, on Zoom, especially with the time difference. He was here, I was in the UK. But to go through what we did, and one thing Chris and I really learned, because he's very spiritual as well, which makes it a lot easier, especially in a conscious relationship, is the communication of I feel triggered today, and him asking me what I need, especially when it comes to because we're moving more into Tantra now, especially, you know, because like sex is great and we love it and we're sexual people, but the Tantra side of things, you know, connecting in different ways and, you know, being with each other and meditating together and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And we're making more time for it now because I feel like I need it now. Like, it's, how can I explain it, is 18 months away from your partner, I'm like, I want physical for a good long period of time. And it's been amazing and we've just got married, but now it's like my soul's going, okay, you know, you got it now, you're moving into more deeper connection, which, you know, we're both getting there. We're actually, whether you agree with this term, we're actually twin flames. So there's that element of, we were triggering each other in such a powerful way. We were literally going through the same stuff. We're like the same person. It's so bizarre. It's weird, but it's just, and that's another podcast for the day, but it really was a huge awakening for us both in them 18 months. So I am excited to ask you about Tantra as well, because I am new to that too. I've heard about it. I've read things about it. Chris actually got me, because Chris is a teacher. He actually got me to write a little article on Tantra when I was in the UK. We just gave each other little assignments to do, which was quite fun. And I just kind of Googled and I watched videos and I just wrote up this little essay and I sent to him and he was like, oh my God, that's great. And I just remember reading about it and I remember just, there's the physical, which we all love physical. We've got all these physical things that pleasure us and it's great. But when it comes to Tantra, that also for me is a pleasure, isn't it? It's not all about how I felt with Chris was, the physical is great, but because I was without it for 18 months, there's a lot coming up in that for me. I'm doing a lot of reflection at the moment, like 18 months without your physical partner and only just yourself for pleasure. A lot of it came, it's coming up the last few weeks of, wow, 18 months of celibacy, of just, you know, with a partner. So moving into Tantra, I feel like that's honoring the 18 months apart. Like, I feel like there's something around that, if that makes sense.
Okay, there's so much to unpack there. So I think one thing to start with is to just acknowledge that there's neo-tantra and then there's traditional tantra. And there is some overlap. So neo-tantra started about 1906 in San Francisco and it's focused on sexuality. Right. So a lot of what people call tantra in the Western world is actually neo-tantra. Traditional tantra has been around in India thousands of years. The texts begin around 500 CE and there are hundreds, thousands of texts. The word tantra, one of the meanings of the word is text itself. And it's a path to awakening and liberation that includes all aspects of the human experience. So in the sutras, and Christopher Wallace is my source for this information, I study with him. So he talks about how something like 2%, maybe 3% of sutras reference sexual practices, for example, and most tantras have nothing in there at all about sex. But because tantra is an all-inclusive thing, there were a few sexual rituals that were done in some of the lineages, but those sexual rituals had nothing to do with pleasure, nothing to do with pleasing your partner or having better sex or better orgasms or better intimacy. Those rituals were about using sexuality to dissolve conditioning and to realize the self as the one, Shiva, right? So
thanks
now
for
that doesn't,
because I didn't know about the two different ones. So they say that's why I do these podcasts, because I learn every day.
Totally, right? And so that's the first thing to recognize is, traditional tantra and neo-tantra. Now, neo-tantra is immensely valuable and has a lot to offer the human condition, particularly around sexuality. And it does include like some of the stuff around awakening, liberation, self-realization, etc. But the emphasis is very much on sexuality and the pleasure of the sexual human, etc., which is quite different. If you read, like, this is one of the tantric texts. This is the Recognition Sutras. It's a translation by Christopher Wallace, 20 sutras. And they basically outline the nature of the spiritual path, the nature of reality, the nature of the self. And so, I absolutely adore and love this text. I'm just going to read you.
I was like,
two little sutras.
Could you read one?
So this is Sutra 1 and then Sutra 2. Sutra 1. Awareness, free and independent, is the cause of the performance of everything. And so what that's pointing to is that everything is contained and permeated by awareness. There is nothing in this world, there's nothing in this universe that is outside of awareness. So that's, see how it's describing the nature of reality. Sutra 2. Through her own will, awareness unfolds the universe on the canvas that is herself. And so there's a sense of like the universe, all of manifest reality arises out of the movement of awareness, which is the goddess, you see. And I mean, I just love that text. So
like
freaking
just
beautiful.
Like those little statements and phrases. It's like when you read Rumi and you read the Tao, it's like you sit with it and you just think, it speaks just directly to your soul, but you can feel like your human brain trying to decipher it, and you don't actually need to. You just read the words and it makes you feel a certain way, like it just did then. It gave me like, oh, when you read those two.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So that's the major thing to realize about Tantra, is that there's Neo Tantra and then there's traditional Tantra. What else do you want to know?
I know, like, I feel like it's like I'm the student here. It's great. I love it. Well, I think so. Let's get naked here now, right? As in authenticity.
Okay.
Right.
Yes, I like getting naked like that.
It's funny, all the listeners will be like, let's watch YouTube. Did they get naked? No, we didn't get naked like clothing. We just so with Chris and I, there's that, I feel like we're in that routine now of, we live together. He has 2 stepchildren, which I love dearly. We have them week on, week off. Now I'm really craving spiritual connection at the moment. Like we do spiritual work together, but sometimes I feel like I don't really need to do it all the time. I was chatting to Neil Donald Walsh a few weeks ago, which was just incredible. I absolutely love his work. And I asked him, I just wanted to know, what's your spiritual daily practice? He went, I don't really have one. I was like, what? Because we think that, Wendy or all my spiritual teachers have this like daily practice they stick to every day. And some days I don't feel like I want to just sit down and read and meditate and do everything. I want to just be out in nature or whatever it is. So when it comes down to Tantra, now I know the difference with the two. If prior to this conversation, if you'd have said, oh, do you know about Tantra, Pippa would have been like, oh yeah, it's about like, not having sex and touching each other in different ways and using feathers and, meditating together and all this. And it's great. So if I was to bring in the traditional Tantra into my life and my relationship, how would you describe and how would you advise to do that?
Ooh, I like it. That's a cool question. Yeah, I mean, like in the text and all of that, like traditional Tantra doesn't really give 2 shits about your relationships as such, and yet at the same time, when we do our own work, then the way that we perceive reality and the way that we perceive the other begins to shift and change. So then our experience of reality and the experience of the other changes immensely. And so one of the teachings in traditional Tantra is that there is one actor playing all the roles, right? Shiva, right? And what that is referring to is that consciousness itself, or awareness itself, is looking out through your eyes, through my eyes, through your partner's eyes, and to feel into that as a teaching, and to recognize that when we are interacting with someone, we're often interacting with our idea of who we think we are, or who we think they are, and who we think we are. But we're interacting with our idea of them, and we're interacting with our expectations, and we're interacting with our assumptions. And so if you can get really curious, and I found this, like, I'm single right now, but I was in a relationship last year that had lasted 3 years, and it really felt like I was constantly meeting my partner for the first time. Like he'd come home from work and it was like I felt like I was continually doing my work, and I just never knew what it was going to be like to connect with him, because I was letting go of the ideas and expectations and the assumptions, and seeing, can I be so orientated to awareness to right now and let all of those ideas go and just see this man for his essence and who he's showing up as in this moment. So then I'm responding to who he is in this moment, rather than my ideas, expectations, assumptions of him. Yeah. And so I found that was just, oh my God, it was such a beautiful way to interact. And then I would notice if there was an interaction where I had an idea, I was projecting or assuming or expecting, because those interactions would have a different kind of, they would
Yeah.
feel different,
Yeah.
not so alive, not so, there wasn't so much continuity between us.
I do that a lot. So there's moments where, as you mentioned earlier, but with triggers, they don't last as long. I don't sit with them for days. And, when I was 21, they probably last about 5 months, because I was constantly going back and reliving things. So I remember speaking to Neil Donald Walsh, and I just wanted to ask him questions that I just would ask myself on a daily basis. What would Wayne do in the situation? What would Neil do in the situation? Because they were such spiritual teachers in my life. And, he explained it perfectly about response and reaction and things like that. And it just, exactly what I knew deep down. And there's moments in my day where I'm home. So I work from home, and my obviously husband Chris goes to work and he works from home as well, so he's doing a bit of both. And I can feel this part of me wanting to be offended for whatever reason it is. It'll be something stupid, like, I'm trying to think of an example, like just trying to think of one that's happened recently where it's
like you left a dirty coffee mug in the bathroom.
Yeah, something so stupid, or like, I did, something stupid. Let's just go with that. So say he left a coffee mug in the bathroom, which he didn't, but yeah, just things like that. And I just see it, and then I can just feel this rise of, just like, you can feel it, and I'm like, what's the big deal? Like, what is? And I'm having a conversation in my head, going like, why are you even worried about that? It's just a mug. So what? Just move it and put it in the. But what's amazing is that he gets to come home and give him a kiss, say I missed him, and I sit down and I said, you know what? You left that mug in the bathroom today. And I could feel myself getting pissed off, but you know what? It doesn't even matter. And he just laughs it off, but that's kind of a situation what we would go through. But I see it, I can and that's the self-awareness, isn't it? I can recognize it, and you can either let it absorb. I love how I can use dissolve or absorb. You can let it absorb your whole emotion and just be like, I'm going to sit in this all day and be offended all day and assume all these things. Or I can stop myself and say, hang on, what is this going to achieve? What is this going to, like, for your relationship? What's this going to do for your relationship? Is it really true? What? So there's different things that can happen, but the self-awareness for me, I laugh it off. I just go and brush my teeth in the morning. I'm like, oh, you silly thing. I'm like, just, and so for me, when it's to the healing journey, and the awakening journey, I think what's really key, and the message I'm kind of trying to get across, is to have fun, because a lot of the healing and the spiritual and the darkness and the shadow and all this dark night of the soul, it's all like very heavy, and it's like, oh my God, I want to break. I just want to go and live in a cottage for a month and not do anything, it's but if you can make it fun, have like, especially if you're in an open relationship, because I always teach that about communication is hard in relationships. It's a big key tool to have. Is I can laugh it off with Chris, which is great. I can just say I got triggered over something. He's like, come here, you silly thing. And I'm just like, because it doesn't really matter in the long run, but if it is something more serious, a lot of clients that have whoever I'm working with, it's a lot more serious. They can have falling outs and, things like that. So it's just about catching the aware. And sometimes I don't even share them. Sometimes I don't have to share them. I can just write them in my journal and be like, oh, this happened today. But I'm finding them very less frequent now. And I think once what I've seen a shift, especially since moving to New Zealand. I'm in a different country, different environment, different energy, different people, completely different. My life's completely shifted. Is I've started to notice things differently now. I've got 2 stepchildren. They trigger me, which is great, because then I ask the universe to send me the next steps of my journey. So when they trigger me, I'm like, great, I needed that lesson. Their behaviors are stuff I did as an 8-year-old and a 12-year-old. So I'm starting to be grateful for them, but I'm having the fun. That's the messages I'm wanting to just say, is have fun with the healing journey, because it can be really heavy, and it can just be long and challenging. It doesn't have to be that all the time.
The playfulness and the lightheartedness is such an antidote, and oh my God, it helps out immensely. Like, I mean, I've had to digest a lot of childhood trauma for various reasons, and the ability to be lighthearted around it, or to be playful around it and I wasn't able to do that initially at all. But as that ability started to come in, it was like, oh, thank goodness, I can laugh about this. I can be lighthearted. I can be playful, because it's not serious. It's just the human journey. We all have our karmic tensions, our path, all the different stuff that we're carrying from the ancestors. It's all, this is the role you get to play, so might as well enjoy it, even if you feel like shit. If you can find that can be a real game changer of going, oh, I feel like shit right now. Can I actually just enjoy that? Can I get off on feeling like shit? If I'm feeling like shit, I might as well enjoy feeling like shit,
Yeah, because you can just sit in that self-wallowing and just self-pity for days and days. And it's like, no one's going to pick you up but yourself. You can go out with your friends, you can watch a movie, you can eat chocolate until you're blue in the face. Like, you just, anything, but it's you that ultimately does it. You got to get up and do it. But there was something else that came in my mind, and it's just gone. I was going to think about, there's something come up and it's just gone. Oh, it's going to come back. I'm grateful to be in a conscious relationship with Chris. I think it's just, I'm craving that next level now. I'm craving that next step, that was it. It's come back in my head. Go on. What are you going to say?
I was just going to say, even that though, to be curious about that, craving that next, that more,
Yeah,
more, and I go, oh, what would it be like to just be, I'm just going to be here. Maybe there's no more lessons. Maybe there's no more, maybe I'm just going to fully be here and surrender to here and see what that is like. Because what I've noticed about the spiritual path is the way that the mind will deceive us. It's quite wily, and it will start to present itself in spiritual clothing, you see. And so that desire for the next step, the next lesson, maybe just be there.
Yeah, it's the same for like study. Like, I'm always looking for the next modality to learn, the next course to sign up to, the next coach to hire, the next membership.
So be curious. Be really curious about when you feel that impetus toward the next. See if you can really feel the energy underlying it. Get curious about the root of it. See if you can get intimate with the energy of the root of that. And it doesn't mean that you don't necessarily go for the next thing at all, but it just means that you're more aware of the energy that's underlying the urge for the next, and see where that takes you.
Definitely around fear of missing out, because that came up a lot when I was separated from Chris. There was the FOMO coming up for that too. I'm missing out on 18 months of my life. So a lot of stuff I went through as a child. I had a lot of bowel issues, and there was a lot of not restraining, but what's the best word? I was very sick.
Limitations.
Sorry, not restrained. I wasn't restrained. I was just like limitations of, I'd have to go to hospital, because I'd have to have enemas and things like that. And I'd have to sit on the toilet until I went to the toilet, and I couldn't play with the toys until I'd been in the toilet. So I was very solitude for like an hour.
What a great metaphor. Deal with your shit, then you can play. Did no one hand you a toy to hold on to while you're sitting on the toilet so you could play while you were waiting?
Nope. So I think there's that fear of missing out a little bit. All the kids are playing in the area, and I'm just sat on the toilet, like waiting to go to the toilet. And obviously I had a lot of because it was the brain stuff. It's from like 2 to about 8. So there's a lot came up with that, and a lot comes up with loads of stuff in my life to do with that period of my life. Not feeling good enough, feeling like the smelly kid, feeling like this, feeling like that. And I remember going through things where, like, my mum and dad were really upset because they didn't want me to get bullied, and I never did in a sense, but a lot of stuff around just feeling like I was the oddball and just the odd one out, because I was always at the hospital, always at the doctors. So there's definitely something around fear of missing out, where having to just be sat, away from the toys, being a 4-year-old on a toilet. I remember my bum used to ache like mad. I remember just be sat there, I'd be like, this is shit. I didn't say shit as a 4-year-old, but I was like, I want to go and play with all those toys. So I think there's a link to that, but I think there's something else happening as well. There's something definitely, because I've always got this, what's next for me? What's next in my life? Now I've just got married. What's next? It's like, no, I've just got to just be, I'm really working on that.
Yeah. And you can use that same technique of the devour, digest, dissolve. So when you feel that what's next, you devour it. Oh, there's that. And then digest is kind of going down to the root of it, being really curious about the underlying energy. And then whatever impressions of the past arise, just digest them fully and let it dissolve. And then you may still want to do the thing, but now the energy underlying it is it's clean, it's neutral, it's not coming from the past, you see. It's coming from right here, right now.
Yeah. The thing I wanted to ask you was something that got me curious after speaking to Neil. Was he kind of was challenging me to like come up, have an opinion on something. I said, I don't really have opinions. I'm just kind of open to things. I'm very open to different, options and situations. He said, well, let me help you form an opinion. I was like, okay. And he gave me this gorgeous, beautiful, divine 3-minute, made me cry. And he asked me the question. I was stumped. I was like, I was just like, and I thought, I'm going to ask people that. Now, it's not a trick question. It's just, I'm curious to ask other people, because again, from what I was thinking, he's not the opposite, but I was kind of like, for example, Dolores Cannon, that I've trained under with hypnosis, she believes we came here as an earth school to learn lessons. And if we don't learn them, we come back again and learn the lessons. Now, Neil doesn't agree with that. Neil thinks we came here to experience as an image of God.
I'm on Neil's team.
Yeah, and I'm on Neil's team, but I also believe we learn. We do. But as Neil said, when does the lesson stop? You can constantly learn something over and over again. So if I ask you a question, just answer it however you want it to answer. Why do you think we are here?
To experience, to be, to express, to delight, to enjoy the fuck out of the fact that we are here in a material reality in human form. And along the way, we might learn. And when we do things that consistently cause suffering, we might recognize and go, oh shit, I need to learn a lesson so I don't have the suffering anymore. Right. But that's not why we're here. That's a construct. And to a degree, you could say that, are we here just to experience and to express? I mean, you look at the flower. Why is the flower here? Do you think the flower needs to learn any lessons?
That's what he said about the tree. He said that about the tree seed.
Yeah. And why are we any different from the flower, or from the cat? Or we're just here to be what we are. And the difficulty is, as humans, is the neocortex, there's the comparison mind, there's the ability to remember things back through time. And so all of a sudden, then there's that desire, then there's the survival instinct, and then there's the desire to please others, because if you don't please others, they'll kick us out of the tribe and we will die.
Yeah, definitely.
So there's all of this complexity that begins to come
same with the complex. We're so complex.
Yeah. And then there's a way to just let all of that go and just know oneself as awareness, and to literally just be, like, to let the goddess or let awareness express through the being, so that there's no need to control, manage, manipulate, figure shit out. Learn to just surrender deeply into the majesty of this life, whatever it brings, whether your home is being destroyed, or the grief and the heart, all of the different things, like, ultimately to recognize it's all aliveness. It's all about being alive and being human.
I did, when he told me the little 3-minute story, I was like, oh my God, he just speaks right here, just right to my soul. And I kind of, I just take everything with that pinch of salt, because everything's a possibility, isn't it? Everything is possible. But I think it's, when you think about it, there's so much coming up for me in the sense of what I want to teach and things I don't want to kind of focus on. There was a lot of pressure. Maybe we'll just touch on this as well before, because I could talk to you for hours, is the pressure of, because I'm spiritual and awake, because people would say I'm awake, the pressure to talk about certain topics, like, sex trafficking, about the Illuminati, about all these different topics. And I'm aware of them, but I'm just not meant to focus on them, because it's not my purpose. I don't feel fulfilled when I'm talking about them. I don't light up when I'm talking about them, where some of my friends can talk about it for hours and hours. It lights them up because they're helping a certain area, a certain topic and things like that. So there's that pressure of feeling, of being spiritual. And like you mentioned about, we can get really obsessed with finding a lesson in something. I've not learned my lesson yet, or I need to heal this. And it becomes an obsession for some people. And, it's remind yourself to just be, and align yourself and know that you are here to be a divine human. And, because to be in this physical body is a blessing. It's an absolute blessing. It's an absolute blessing.
Such a blessing. Yeah, to be alive, to be human, and to know that, you know, to really deeply know that. I mean, ultimately, humans are meaning-making machines. You know, we like to make meaning out of things. And why are we here? Who knows? What are we meant to do? Who knows? And teachings like, you know, we're here to learn lessons and blah, blah, they can be useful. It's a useful construct for as long as it is useful. But for some students at some points on the path, if they believe in that as the ultimate reality, we're here to learn lessons, and don't recognize that it's simply a belief that serves a purpose until it doesn't, then people get stuck on things. It's like, no, it's all a construct. Everything that you believe is a belief by definition, because you believe it. None of it is ultimately true. Capitalism is not ultimately true. It is just a framework. It is just a construct. And that's the big thing about Tantra, is that, you know, truth cannot be put into words. Truth is that which exists before words. It's a felt sense of reality itself.
Yeah. The Tao teaches that too, you know, especially when Wayne talks about a quantum moment. There's no words to describe it. It's just, you can't describe it. You just can't. He tries. You just can't. It's like you try to explain it and you really can't explain it because there isn't any words. But the feeling, you know, the feeling is next level. It like you said, it's like having an ecstasy high without the ecstasy. It's just and I'm so grateful to have had an experience like that, you know, and my husband did as well. It's just, we had a moment where it was like, what the hell am I doing? Like, we're on this planet. It's absolutely incredible. It's like when you watch the stars at night, and I was looking into the Hubble field and now the James Webb images. You look at the images and you just look up at night, especially here. Oh my God, the stars here are incredible. And your mind just, and the thing is, your brain can't comprehend what's out there, and your brain can't comprehend the possibilities of time and the illusion of time, and where does the universe start and end? Does it keep going? Does it, you know, we will only know when we pass this life. But like I said, you've just mentioned the word earlier, curiosity. We are curious beings, and I'm always curious. I'm such a curious person. You know, like you said, you've been talking about Tantra. Now I'm going to go and look at Tantra and the book you read from, because I get excited about learning new things and being curious. Like, you know, so that's definitely a message to take away, isn't it? To be more curious, because that's what we're here to do.
Yeah. And you can't be curious and judgmental at the same time. And as humans, when we're in that judgmental, if we're judging others, we are judging ourselves and still. Right. And so in judgment of others and self is what causes suffering. So one of the fundamental things I teach is orientation to curiosity, because it just takes you out of judgment. And then just be curious. Someone like you were curious about that person who left a note on your windscreen. You were like, well, I don't know what's going on in their life. I don't know what's happening for them. And you opened yourself up into curiosity, and then you weren't judging them. And then because you were curious, you opened the sort of the field between you and that person. You felt that compassion arise for whatever might be going on for that person. So curiosity, the cultivation of curiosity, I reckon, is one of the number one things to do on the path. Cultivate curiosity in every single moment about your own perception of reality, about other people, about the world itself.
I don't have any more questions, but is there anything else coming up for you that you want to discuss before we finish?
That sense that you have, those moments that you talked about, looking at the stars, and, you know, it's just to know that that's always there, right? That sense of continuity with life itself, where the boundaries, the borders of the apparent self begin to dissolve. It's always there in every moment. And the fact that you've experienced it, right, means that you have that energetic imprint of that. So at any moment you can choose to tune in and just remember what it feels like to look up at the stars when you're perceiving through the felt sense rather than through conditioned mind. And that's the big shift, right? That's what awakening is about to a degree, is when we no longer perceive reality by thinking about it, but by directly sensing and feeling and meeting it, you see?
Yeah, like you said, when I'm looking at the stars, it's not even about what I'm saying, it's about what I'm feeling. You know, the stuff I'm feeling is, sometimes Chris has got a big telescope and he'll put it out in the back, and we found the comet last week, and just that. I didn't really want to talk about it. I just wanted to just sit there and be like, oh, that's where we come from.
Yeah.
It's like we come from stars. It's
Yeah.
like, it's just, and just it
Yeah.
just felt warm. It felt warm. It felt natural. It felt as it felt. There's no words. I said it just felt as it felt. Yeah.
That's it. Right. No words necessary.
Yeah.
One final little thing I will just mention is my book, Sex, Drugs, and Mostly Yoga.
Oh.
So that's all about my recovery from psychosis, the hospital, the Kundalini awakening, etc. So that's out. It's you can get it Book Depository, Amazon, but it's also an Audible. So for those of you that love listening to books, and I voiced the whole thing, recorded it in like 3 days. So that's out there in the world.
Yeah, otherwise, I'll put the link on the I
was just gonna say, it's such a delight to chat to you. Like, welcome to New Zealand. I'm
Thank
so you. Welcome.
Thank you. I think I will put I'll put your book on the show notes. I definitely want to have that as a copy to read into, because I love those stories, how you can just be so open about them and talk about them, not feel the shame and the guilt around it. As a lot of men do. And I'll put your podcast link on the show notes as well, so people can find you on your podcast. And where do you hang out most? Facebook, Instagram?
I've been hanging out a lot on Instagram lately. But I am also on Facebook, but Instagram, something about that platform that I'm liking. And I'm also on YouTube as well.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Well, this is obviously going to go on my podcast and YouTube, so anyone can watch. If you are watching the video, there was the audio available as well. I'll put Kara-Leah's website, all the links, so you can contact her. I'm sure if you want to reach out to her, if you got any questions, she will be happy to chat to you. And I am looking at joining your membership. It's just the timing. I'm on it every week going, oh,
it's a cool community of people who are showing up, doing practice, applying the teachings. And, it's like, yes, it's an online community, but we meet in person whenever we can. So that's really awesome when we come together in person. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being on and your time today. I know the cyclone's been a bit whoops. I had a podcast interview rescheduled this morning as well, but anyone in New Zealand listening, I hope you're safe. Reach out if you've got any questions. If you've resonated with this podcast episode, let us know. Reach out, send us a DM, share it with your friends, tag us on Instagram, tag us on Facebook. And as always, please leave a 5-star review. It really helps me to grow. I don't think I actually mentioned this, but I'll do it now. I checked, I'm in the top 5% of global podcasts, which I was like, oh my God. Like, even though it's not about the numbers, Chris, my partner, he's got a massive podcast, which is just incredible. And he was just Googling and checking things out, and he sent me it, and I was like, what? So I'm reaching people, and that makes me so happy. So thank you everyone for listening and sharing, and it means the absolute world, because I've been doing this for almost 3 years, and I just love it. I love it. I love talking to people like you, Kara-Leah, and meeting new people. And I'll come off this call now and be buzzing, absolutely buzzing. Thank you so much.
Well, congratulations. That's a huge achievement. Blessings.
Thank you. Thanks for listening, guys, and we'll be back next week with another episode. See you soon. Bye.